We've all used joysticks for video games, but they can be used for so much more. Welcome back for lesson 5 of the ultimate guide to Arduino automation. In this video, you will learn how easy it is to interface an analog joystick with an Arduino. This comes in very handy for controlling things like motors and linear actuators. Here I have two different types of analog joysticks. The first is a very inexpensive thumb joystick, which has X and Y directions, as well as a button if you push down on the stick. The second costs a little bit more money, but it is better for fine control. This one does not have a button, just the X and Y directions. Today we're going to be using the thumb joystick, but don't worry, we'll be using the hand joystick in future videos. Connecting this joystick to the Arduino is very simple. Simply connect the VCC pin on the joystick to 5 volts on the Arduino, ground to ground. The X direction will go to analog input 0. The Y direction will connect to analog input 1. And the switch we will connect to pin 7. This first sketch will show you how to get raw readings from the joystick. First of all, we're going to start with pin mode for our digital input pin 7. Of course, we're going to call that an input, and we're going to do underscore pull-up. Next, we're going to start our serial monitor with the serial.begin command, and we will set our baud rate to 9600 as usual. Then down here in the loop, we are going to print our readings from our joystick. So we'll do serial.print, and then we will say X equals, and then space, and then we will serial print our analog read of pin A0, which will be our x-axis. And we will do the same for the y-axis. So I'm just going to copy these two lines here and paste them here. So instead we're going to say y. But let's put a few spaces before that y. And for that axis, we're going to read analog pin 1. Now we're going to test whether or not our button is pushed. So we'll say if digital read for pin 7, if that is true, then we're going to write a space and we're going to say the button is off. And then we're going to close our bracket, and then we're going to say else, start a new curly bracket. We will write serial print, and we'll have a space, button is on. Now actually I want to make these last two serial print line so that we end the line with the status of the button. And then let's add a delay. Let's take our readings every half second or 500 milliseconds. And then let's check that to make sure we don't have any bugs. All right, now let's upload that to our board and start the serial monitor. All right, so you'll notice right off the bat that with no input, the X and Y values are about halfway between the full scale of 0 and 1023, and the button is off. So if I push the joystick a little bit, you'll notice the X reading goes down to 0. If I go the other way, it goes up to 1023. Same with the Y direction. Goes down to about 23, not quite to 0, and then all the way left goes to 1023. And then if I push down on the lever, the button gets toggled on. So a couple little problems. You'll notice the X and Y values are not centered. They should both be around 512. That's just an issue with this particular joystick. These more expensive ones have an adjustment screw so you can dial them in so that both the X and the Y match exactly. And the other problem is that these numbers, 512, 517, they don't really tell us much about the position of the joystick. So let's fix our code to make it a little more intuitive. So we're going to add just a couple things to our code. Clear up at the top. We're going to add an integer for X and an integer for Y. And then down here below in the loop, we're going to do a new command that X equals map. We're going to use this map function, which I think is pretty cool. Analog_read of A0, and we're going to write 0 and 1023, which is the full range of the analog input. And we're going to map those numbers to be between -500 and 500. And we'll do the exact same for the y-axis. So we'll change this to a y, and we'll change this to a 1. And then down here in our serial print commands, instead of analog read, we will simply say X, and we will say Y. And that should be it. So let's upload this and restart our serial monitor. Okay, so you can see the X and Y are more close to 0. As I move it one direction, we go to 500, the other way, -500. Same with the Y, -500, all the way to 500. If I push the button is on. So now these readings are much more meaningful as they show both direction and magnitude, which in future lessons you will see is very important for controlling other things. So this lesson was short and sweet, but be sure to tune in for lesson 7, where you will learn to use this joystick to control a motor's speed and direction, and also for lesson 9, where we'll use a joystick to control the actual position of a linear actuator. So stay tuned for those. See you next time.